What's some interesting research that's come out recently about sprouts that you could share with us?
I mean, the probably the most recent ones are the continuing of how they open up the NRF2 pathway and how they're anti-inflammatory. So that's a big part.
Explain the NRF2 pathway.
So the NRF pathway is something that controls how the body detoxes. And if the body doesn't detox, it gets inflamed and it affects all of the internal organs and the structures. So Dr. Rhonda Patrick did a lot of work, on looking at the anti-inflammatory components of that. So if you were to look at what is the cause of heart disease, it's inflammation of the arteries. And so the work that actually how sprouts are anti-inflammatory is one. How sprouts can detoxify benzene and air pollutants is just another one. How interesting research, like there's no cure to autism, right? But there is research that says that when someone who is experiencing symptoms of autism experiences a fever, their symptoms get reduced. So there's something in the brain that the fever shifts the brain chemistry so someone will act less raging, less, erratic behavior and the like.
After they have sprouts?
Well, this is if they have a normal fever, right? A fever like a heat fever and the like. The broccoli sprouts, through their hermetic effect, create heat shock proteins in the brain, which are similar to the behavior of a fever, which lessens the behavior and effects of the autism. So lots of research if you want to go down that rabbit hole, right? Type dementia, Alzheimer's.
Biggest killer in the UK.
Right, AKA type 3 diabetes, is totally an impact of, being overweight, obese, the calcification of the brain, and there's no reversal, but there's actually things that you could do to mitigate the benefit. So one, overall, just whole food, plant-based diet is one. Well, the research on the broccoli sprouts is they actually can penetrate and have greater and faster results because of the enzymatic parts and the glucosinolate affects things. So it's very fast reacting. So in general, it's well known that cruciferous vegetables have glucosinolates in them that can have these chemoprotective and effects on brain chemistry. So when they looked at all the cruciferous vegetables, broccoli had the most of the glucosinolate. When they looked at what kind of broccoli, was it broccoli rabe? Was it Calabrese broccoli? Was it this broccoli? It turns out it wasn't the type of broccoli as much as it was the stage, and the stage was the sprouting stage.
Wow.
So it has to do with not only the varietal, but it has to do with the stage. And so the broccoli seeds that you have on that table there, every seed is given a finite amount of the glucosinolate. Amount actually gets diluted. So theoretically, you would eat the seeds to get the most, except the seeds don't digest well.
But I was going to say that, how is that going to react with my gut?
Not very bioavailable. You could grind those, you could crush them, if you cook them, you can make them more bioavailable, but then you end up killing the enzyme myrosinase, which is required to trigger the conversion of the glucoraphane into sulforaphane. So you need both the enzyme and the compound in order to get sulforaphane. So that's where the best and easiest and most scalable form is to consume them in the sprout form.
Wow. Okay. And so if I grow these for 2 days, is that the best time to eat them?
I think day 3.
Day 3.
Day 3 on the broccoli sprouts.
Okay. I'm just thinking of like the most bioavailable nutrition to oneself
Day 3.
with all of this kind of data.
Day 3.
And people might be surprised that you did this for 30 days.
Yeah, exclusively.
You just ate sprouts.
Yes.
Okay, a couple of questions. Protein, which I know you're going to touch upon, but were you hungry? Fat, like how about your fat stores? Like, was that not important? Like, how did you feel through the 30 days?
So the hardest thing, and by the way, I've done 14-day water fast, right? I do 24-hour dry fast. And I could tell you, doing the sprouts for 30 days is easy. And the interesting thing when you think about food addiction, there's no desire to overeat the sprouts. Like, there's no desire. Like, you eat the sprouts until you're not hungry or you're full.
But someone's going to say, and I have to say it, but is there desire to eat lots of sprouts?
Well, here's the thing. Most people, right? And I'm very sensitive to this topic. So I just want to like put out all these warnings. I am not promoting anorexia. I'm not promoting weight loss. I'm just talking about my experience.
And I'm pleased you said that.
Yeah. So my experience is that if you add salt, oil, or sugar, or fats, you will eat when you are not hungry because it triggers the dopamine release in the brain. As Dr. Alan Goldhammer and Dr. Lyle write in The Pleasure Trap, you get a shot of dopamine and you will eat and overeat when you are not hungry. So if you have no other food and sprouts are there, you will eat until you are not hungry or till you are full, and you won't overeat, but you will make sure that you eat until you get enough calories. Like, it's just the
But can you get enough calories from sprouts?
Easily. I was getting thousands of, I'm very active, right? I'm very active. I'm 58 years old and I'm a beast. So I run every day, 5K or 10K. I do 300 to 400 push-ups a day. I do pull-ups. Like, I'm very active. So I burn between 2,000, 3,000 calories a day. So for me to keep my weight, I need to make sure I'm eating the calories. So I just have to eat, probably 2 to 3 jars of sprouts every day. Period. End of story.
And what about the fat content? Like, because I sometimes think about if I cook tomatoes, if you add olive oil to it, you increase the lycopene on it. You increase the antioxidant. And we need fat. Fat is important because we have fat-soluble vitamins, So someone listening to this might be saying, well, it doesn't feel like it's got any fat in. So how are we going to make sure that we're having enough fat put in our diet to have these fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin D or vitamin A or vitamin E?
So sprouting chia, sprouting flax, sprouting soy, sprouting peas, sprouting mung beans, sprouting lentils. Like, it's very easy to come up with a formulation. Like, I'm working, advising someone doing an Ironman triathlon who consumes 5,500 to 6,000 calories a day. And we're mapping it out for him to do it on sprouts.
Wow. That density of food must be overwhelming. Just thinking about how much you must be eating.
Yeah, but if you think 1 cup of the sprouts, sprouted lentils or sprouted pulses is 200 calories. So a cup is not that hard. So if you're eating, a big salad, that could be 8 cups. So it's very easy to consume that. What has to happen is you have to be determined. So there are people that are doing water fasting. Like, that's really hard, right? Doing the water fasting. If you could eat the sprouts and someone has a reason why, like, you could go to Hippocrates Health Center, which I love, in West Palm Beach, and spend $500 a day and they will feed you sprouts, right? Or you could do it on your own. But the main reason why, like, for me, like, I did it because I'm raw vegan. I wanted to eat. I didn't want to drive to town. I didn't want to be in the car. I wanted to be in my environment. And I was also curious to see how would I feel? How would I sleep? What kind of movements would I get? How would my energy be?
It's like a self-experiment.
And turns out my energy was off the charts. My sleep was incredible. And my level of satiation was powerful. And I felt really good. And what I realized is that there are 3 animals that are overweight in our world that we know. Humans, dogs, and cats. Animals in nature and in wild, they don't get fat. And they don't become anorexic either. Because if they were anorexic and they were under calorically fed, they would die. And also if they overate, they would die. So animals in nature self-regulate their caloric consumption based on the true physiological, biological needs that they have. And so I was tuning in to nature and I was eating intuitively to what I needed. And sometimes I'd eat more and I could eat a whole jar of sprouted garbanzo beans and a whole jar would be 1,000 calories.
See, I think that's what's interesting because I don't want people to listen to this because I've worked in eating disorders. And I'm very sensitive to when I was living back in New York 15 years ago, you know, there was raw kale that was coming up and you would have kale and tahini and that would be it. And I'm really aware of like how we position this conversation to people that they don't just think, well, I'm going to eat loads of broccoli sprouts and be really healthy, because you're also talking about a diverse range of sprouts when you're doing it for 30 days. So there is beans in there. There is other like pulses and things in there. It's not living on pure broccoli sprouts
100%
for 30 days.
Yeah, you would have to, it would be too many broccoli sprouts to eat that at that level. And so
you're still getting a diversity in there.
Yeah, I wanted to get the diversity. So I was doing chia, flax, fenugreek, radish, clover, broccoli, alfalfa, lentils, sprout, you know, multiple types of lentils and peas. And I was like having a little sprout party.